I am Dr. Jocelyn. I want to talk about me today. Not the polished version that you see online. Not the confident woman who knows who she is and stands firm in it. But we're going to talk about where I actually came from, and the woman that I had to literally unlearn to become who I am now. Because none of this started with fitness. None of it even really started with relationships or mindset or overall confidence. It started a long time ago. I grew up in a home that from the outside probably looked fine, but inside there was instability, emotional inconsistency, a lot of things that taught me early on that love did not always feel safe or predictable. My parents did the best that they could with what they had, and I want to be very clear about this because it matters to me. I have a great relationship with both of my parents now. There is love, respect, forgiveness, and understanding there today. And I'm very grateful for that. But growing up, I didn't have the emotional structure that teaches a child how to regulate their emotions, how to trust themselves, or how to feel secure. And how could I have done that when I was raised by parents who themselves did not have emotional regulation, calmness, healthy communication skills, or accountability? So I adapted. I people-pleased. I became hyper-aware of everybody else's moods, and I learned how to suppress mine instead of express. And when you don't process things as a child, you do not escape them. You carry them. That carried into my adulthood. It carried into my relationships, and it carried into my body. There was a relationship I stayed in for almost 6 years where I slowly disappeared, and I don't blame that relationship. I stayed, I tolerated, I abandoned myself. And during that time, my weight climbed to 275 pounds. Not overnight, slowly, quietly, and comfortably uncomfortable. And at the same time, I was working in the medical field for almost 10 years. I started as a medical assistant, worked my way up to a surgical coordinator for an orthopedic practice, and wow, on paper, it looked like success. In reality, it was toxic as hell. High stress, long hours, constant pressure. I was disconnected from my body, my emotions, and myself. And this is also where I need to be very honest about something else. I was seeking love, attention, and validation in all of the wrong places. Because when you do not learn how to self-soothe, self-validate, or feel secure within yourself, you look for it externally. You look for it in any sort of approval and being chosen, wanted, and feeling seen by anybody that will give you a moment of attention. I did not know how to give that to myself. So I outsourced it. I attached my worth to how I was perceived and how I felt needed, and whether somebody wanted me or not. And the more disconnected I felt from myself, the more I chased things outside to fill that void. I never learned how to sit with myself, validate myself, or feel safe on my own. But external validation is just a temporary hit. It never lasts, and it always costs you more than it gives. The longer that cycle continued, the more lost I became. So I numbed it. Alcohol became my normal, casual, social, accepted, happy hours with coworkers 2 to 3 times a week, drinking at home, after work often, wine, beer margaritas, whatever was around, nothing that dramatic, nothing that screamed problem, just enough to quiet the noise, just enough to take the edge off, just enough to avoid feeling. But here's the truth. You cannot numb pain without numbing yourself. I wasn't just numbing sadness. I was numbing my intuition, my motivation, my self-respect, and the longer I lived like that, the more trapped I felt in the version of myself that I was becoming, until one day something just cracked. It wasn't a breakdown, it was no dramatic rock bottom moment, just a quiet realization that I could not live the rest of my life like that. That was the moment I reached out to a coach. And I didn't know it then, but that coach is now my husband, and that is a story in itself. I will unpack that another day. But what matters is that I finally asked for help. Not casually, not half-assed. I said, I do not want to be this person anymore. So I hired the coach, started strength training. I cleaned up my diet, quit drinking, and most importantly, I worked on this. And I worked relentlessly. I had to emotionally kill the version of myself that survived through the coping, the numbing, the avoiding, the shrinking. That version of me kept me alive at one point, but she could not come with me into the next chapter of my life. I hired coaches, mentors, therapists, not one but many, because healing is not just one breakthrough, it's repetition, it's consistency, and it is choosing growth even when it is so uncomfortable. I had to go back and face wounds that I had been carrying since I was a little girl. Abandonment, fear, insecurity, the need to be chosen, and the desperate need to be validated. And I also had to stop pretending that I was not responsible for my inner world anymore. Here's the part that people don't always like to hear. Yes, there were circumstances that shaped me, I understand that. Yes, there were things that happened to me, but I also created a story about who I was because of those things and circumstances, and I accepted it. I accepted it being anxious. I accepted being insecure. I accepted being depressed, and I accepted living small until one day I just didn't. One simple choice changed everything. I decided that I was never going to go back to being that woman. Not because she was weak, but because she was weak, but because she was at yurting. I stopped identifying with my pain as my personality. I stopped outsourcing my worth. I stopped waiting to be saved. And I finally chose myself. And every day since then has been that choice to lead myself, my life, my purpose, to regulate myself, to hold myself accountable, and to live consciously instead of reactively. My life didn't change because of motivation. It changed because I needed a damn identity shift. I became the woman who does not abandon herself ever, and everything else followed. So if you are listening to this and you feel trapped in a version of yourself that you don't recognize anymore, just hear me loud and clear. You are not broken. You are not behind, and you are not behind, and you are not stuck. But you do have to choose, and you have to choose a better life for yourself. You have to be willing to recognize that the life that you are currently living and the choices that you've made to get here are no longer serving you. They need to be left behind. They may have protected you once. They may have helped you survive, but they are not helping you grow now. It is one choice, one commitment, literally one decision to stop acting out and accepting a story that no longer serves you. And that choice is available to you if you decide to choose it. This is going to sound a little harsh. I do not feel sorry for circumstances when somebody is not actively trying to change, learn, grow, or get better. I just don't, because I've been there. I have lived it. I identified myself as my pain. I wrapped my identity around my trauma, and at some point that stops being an excuse, okay? You cannot keep using that as an excuse. That is just an explanation and a damn excuse. You cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. You just can't. You cannot keep choosing comfort and then call it healing. It doesn't work that way. You can, ought, and will not ever build a new life while clinging to that old identity. That version of you has to die. At some point, accountability becomes your new self-respect. So learn how to do that. That is where the real transformation begins. I am living proof. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So again, I don't care what your circumstances are or what your excuses are in the moment. It is one simple choice to do something for yourself and follow through with it and make it happen. The rest is history.